Good morning, good morning. It's Saturday, 22nd of July 2017. The sun has come up in the east, which suggests that the world is going its usual path, and that's good. I've got a cup of tea, which is good. It's too hot to drink at the moment, so I'm just, and I've got several books. Now, as I was making tea, I was sort of thinking about this. I showed you this book the other day. If I tell you what the book says about itself, it says about this book: the story of Clochemerle has been the rage of France for many years, both as a novel and as a film. It is a candid, uninhibited comedy of the goings-on in a small provincial town and of the fantastic feuds which developed from the decision to erect a public convenience near the parish church. Only a Frenchman could cope with such rollicking situation, and those who have a palate for the liveliness of Gallic humour will relish this full-blooded Rabelaisian chronicle. It is one of the most amusing penguins yet published. Now therein lies a problem. I was born a lot of years ago in a town called Rainham in Essex in England. I went to school in South Hornchurch and then in Gidea Park. I learnt English being spoken to by people all around me who came from London, Essex, southern England. So how does one read a book that is the goings-on in a small provincial town in France? Should one read it with a French accent? I think this is a book that it helps if you start to think about small towns in France, I think. Now let us see where we start. Oh, we start with a map. There are those of you who sometimes suggest that I should start with a map, and I rarely do, and that sort of probably explains a lot. We start with a map, and the book starts, as is sensible, with an introduction to the situation. Chapter 1. A great project. A great project? Un grand projet. A great project. It was the month of October 1922. Now already my French has defeated me. It was the month of October 1922, about 5 heures dans l'après-midi. The principal square of Clochemerle en Beaujolais was shady with its great chestnuts, in the centre of which stood a magnificent lime tree said to have been planted in 1518 to celebrate the arrival of Anne de Beaujeu in those parts. Now this is something, when you go to provincial France, rural France, and you go to these wonderful, wonderful towns, if you look at some of my 3-4-year-old videos, you will find Dern-le-Palestel, you will find Busseau-sur-Creuse, you will find Boussac, you will certainly find Argenton, these beautiful, beautiful little towns, and I can only recommend that you go and visit them. Take your Mercedes-Benz, take your Ford Focus, if you must, take your cars, descend into the middle of France, do it slowly, use the old roads, go to little towns where there aren't signs for tourist information offices, And you will find squares with trees. You will find war memorials to the children of the town that gave their life dans la Première Guerre mondiale. And you will find lists of everybody who died in those terrible, terrible wars. And you will find old men in coffee shops. The French drink coffee, they drink various other things as well. I would suggest that when in France drink coffee, I've never yet, and this is, I'm not trying to be rude, but I've never yet met a Frenchman that can make tea, but the coffee, c'est magnifique. And you'll find groups of elderly men drinking coffee, and they might be drinking them from very small cups. Trust me, they know why. And they will be perhaps having a profiterole, and they will be talking about the crops and politics, because old friends can do that. And this is what we find going on in the town of Clochemerle. Chapter 3 gives us some notable inhabitants of Clochemerle. The baker's name was Farinard. Now that's actually a play on words. If you speak French, you'll know that farine is flour, so presumably the baker would use lots of flour. So there's a play on word there. The tailor was Foutain, the butcher was Friseur, the pork butcher was called Lardon. Well, he would be, wouldn't he? Because we all have pork, bacon, lardons. The wheelwright was Baffaire, the carpenter Bilbois. Well, again, there's a play on word there, isn't there? The carpenter, you know, bois, trees and all that. The cooper, Bois Tavin. These names are evidence of the strength of tradition at Clochemerle and show that the different trades have been handed down from father to son in the same families for several centuries. So this is what we find, and we find this book is a sort of conversation, and it's an observation that is highly comical. But what accent shall we read this in? I will start with a Rainham Essex accent. I've got a strong feeling by the end of this I will be reading in the sort of English accent that you might hear in Dun-le-Palestel or Clochemerle en Beaujolais. Right, enough waffle, tea to be drunk, books to be read, plants to be planted, strawberries to be picked. I've already had one this morning. The start of the book introduces us to some characters that we need to know as we read through the book. We are told how there are two men and they're walking up and down and they're having a discussion. It's a discussion that only two men that have known each other for many years could have. And we're told that one of these men, past 50 years of age, tall, fair-haired, of sanguine complexion, could have been taken for a typical descendant of the Burgundians who formerly inhabited the department of the Rhône. His face, the skin of which was indented by exposure to sun and wind, owed its expression almost entirely to his small, light grey eyes, which were surrounded by tiny wrinkles and which he was perpetually blinking. This gave him an air of roguishness, harsh at times and at others friendly. His mouth, which might have given indications of character that could not be read in his eyes, was entirely hidden by his drooping moustache, beneath which was thrust the stem of a short black pipe, smelling of a mixture of tobacco and dried grape skins, which he chewed at rather than smoked. Thin and gaunt, with long straight legs and a slight paunch, which was more the outcome of lack of exercise than a genuine stoutness, the man gave an impression of a powerful physique. Although carelessly dressed, from his comfortable, well-polished shoes, the good quality of the cloth of his coat, and the collar, which he wore with natural ease on a weekday, you guessed that he was a respected and well-to-do. His voice and sparing use of gesture were those of a man accustomed to rule. What a wonderful picture here the writer has created. Now, you can see this man, you can see him walking along with his moustache and his little pipe. You know this man. His name was Barthélemy Piéchou. He was mayor of the town of Clochemerle, where he was the principal wine grower, owning the best slopes in a southwesterly aspect. In addition to this, he was president of the agricultural syndicate and the departmental councillor, which made him an important personage over a district of several square miles. Then we move on to the second man. And this is a book for reading. This is a book for enjoyment. This isn't a report. This isn't a factual statement. This is a book that is going to draw you in and make you love the characters, or make you know the characters. Some of them you might well end up disliking. His interlocutor, on the other hand, was a puny individual whose age it would have been impossible to guess. His goatee beard concealed a notably receding chin, while over an imposing cartilage serving as an armoured protection for a pair of resonant tubes which imparted a nasal intonation to all his remarks, he wore old-fashioned spectacles with unplated frames. Behind these glasses, which his short sight demanded, the glint of his sea-green eyes was of the kind that denotes a mind given over to wild fancies and occupied in dreaming of the ways and means to an unattainable level. His bony head was adorned with a Panama hat. So again, we've got this character. It goes on. It does go on. There's another 3 paragraphs that deal with this man, just to give us this picture in our head. We now have this scene. If you've never been to France, as I know many of you haven't, you now can see, and I'm sure that in Texas or in Tennessee or in Wisconsin, there are towns not dissimilar to this. The cars on the street might be different and the signs over the drugstore will be different. But here's this town with 2 old friends walking up and down. And we are, by the author, we are transported. I'm now somewhere in rural France. I am now sat outside a cafe, not with a cup of tea, but with a small cup of coffee and a biscuit, and I'm watching these 2 characters wandering up and down, and I'm now thinking, what are those 2 up to? They've got something on their mind, I can see that. Can't see what they've got on their mind, but now I want to know what it is. If you want to know what it is they've got on their mind, go to your local library, get this book, read it. If you can, read it with a French accent. If you can't, well, whoop and ollie your way through it as best you can. It's a wonderful, wonderful book.